Hey, kids, how's it going? Good afternoon. It's just past high noon, 12:04 to be precise, almost 12:05 as a matter of fact. On Super Talk 99.7 WTN and elsewhere in the Central Time Zone, we welcome you to your afternoon hours. Hope you're doing well so far. Hope the morning time went well for you. And I hope to make the next 3 hours breeze right on by until we make way with Brian Wilson and The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Allow me to inundate you with the pleasantries as we're apt to do during this time, and we'll get things lumbering under our own weight. It's Thursday, April 4, 2024. It is our episode 546 of our proceedings, and we appreciate you spending some time with us. Whether you spend 5 minutes of the full 3 hours, we thank you, thank you, thank you. Only one of us gets paid to be here, and that's me. But if you're not here, I will cease to get paid very, very quickly. Bell K, I don't know if he gets paid or not, but he's behind the glass, making sure that everything that comes out of our speaker sounds as good as humanly possible, and I appreciate the yeoman work that he does back there. The soon-to-be erstwhile producer of the Matt Murphy Show, Bell K. Hello, Bell.
To my knowledge, this is volunteer work. That's all I can tell you.
At least as far as your bank account is concerned. Well, here's what you don't sign up for. You don't sign up for everything else that goes along with this show, like all of these streaming applications that we enjoy. Those are up and running, as is the 99.7 radio signal, and we appreciate you listening anywhere you go. You can download us, or you can find us on your streaming app, and you can take us where you go. I encourage you to download the WTN app. I think it's the easiest way to listen to the show, the cleanest way to listen to the show. But you can also find us on Spotify and iHeart and all of the rest of them. And, of course, there's Super Talk TV. Now, if you're in a static situation and you want to watch a funny-looking guy talk about the news of the day and jiggle around in his chair for 3 hours, it's what I do. I cannot sit still. I've started watching myself in the studio. Dan Mandis refuses to put up a monitor. And so I've taken it upon myself to take up one of the two monitors that's here. You know, I've been begging for the monitor. You know, I've been begging for
you know why he won't do that.
Because he has to watch himself.
Right, exactly.
And he doesn't want to do that.
No,
No. We've never talked about this, but I am as sure of that as I'm sure of anything. That we could put one right underneath the television monitor that we utilize to watch some of the goings-on and #NeverCNN and other media organizations. I've begged for one right under there so that you can kind of see what's happening on the TV side of things. Make sure you don't have a boogie in your nose or something like that. God forbid. And we don't get it. But I've posted mine up, and I realize that I have to sit a little more still in my life. I don't know that I can do it. I'm a box of frogs over here while I do the radio show, and I apologize for that. You know who doesn't have any of these worries? Headless Bell. We call him that because he refuses to be on the television side of things, warrants and whatnot. But he does offer us titles every day. I don't know what they are until he says them to you. Today's episode, 546, is entitled
Matt Murphy reminds you the IRS is not just staffed by thieves, but by liars, too. Libertarian lunch, noon to 3.
All right. Let's talk.
I'm sorry, it had to be said.
Let's talk. No, this is good. I want to give all of you, during the Libertarian Lunchtime Hour, a bit of a peek behind the curtain as to some of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis. So, Bell, jump in here at your leisure as I tell the story of Bell K and the IRS. If I had thought about it, we would have some soft music playing in the background. Maybe you've got something that you can offer us, something tender and touching, because that's what this story is.
Yeah, let me look up some death metal real quick.
Okay, so Bell K, you got communicated by what is this person's name?
Well,
this is your host being really prepared. The interview, in my defense, was tomorrow, right? Yeah,
we were supposed to interview the commissioner of the IRS. I believe his name is Commissioner Werfler. If I'm getting that correct.
Yes, I remember that because I remember his name reminded me of Danny Werfel, the former quarterback of the Florida Gators. Werfler, I think, is his name. But this is
Werfel.
Well, it was Werfel.
W-E-R.
This is the head honcho of the Internal Revenue Service.
Yes. And he was supposed to have been with us tomorrow at 12:30 to discuss a few new initiatives they have going on, one of which is the ability to file your taxes electronically for free, which, oddly enough, the free market has been providing to you for over 10 years.
For a generous amount of time,
Yes.
sure. So the commissioner of the IRS was going to be in our studio tomorrow at 12:30.
Yes.
By the way, another programming note, I want to prepare each of you for this. It is through no fault of my own, but I am the messenger when I tell you your favorite segment of the week will not be happening this time around. Fry J will not come tomorrow. He's out of town. Keith writes in and says the Godfather theme would be that would be perfect. You need the Godfather theme on the board
Because it's basically the mafia.
That's right. That's what it works for us. So I cannot tell you how hard I have worked 0.0% on any of this, but I can't tell you how hard the work became, how quickly it became difficult. But I think this is a microcosm of why government is what it is. I think it's a microcosm of why it's $34.5 trillion in debt. It's a microcosm about why we are so disgusted with the size, scope, and lack of responsibility by government. I think it's a microcosm of our feelings about government generally, because any interaction that we have with government ends poorly, it seems.
When you got here yesterday, what was I doing?
You were walking three separate people around. Now, I'm going to focus on a couple of these things the way that I saw it. I want to hear from you.
Okay.
You were walking three separate people around. Three people came to scout the location where the IRS commissioner would be during his 20-minute interview.
Advancing security.
So how many times since I came here in November of 2021, I guess it was December when I first was on air, 2021, how many times have we had anyone advance a security team to this building?
Never. In fact, Mayor O'Connell, who has a security person, his guy just showed up day of, right before Freddie got here.
Mm-hmm.
And and I'm not saying this disparagingly, he just sort of hung out. Yeah. You know, it wasn't like he was, sitting in a corner with a sniper rifle ready to take somebody out.
I can tell you the number of times that I've seen. Typically, if you have the governor in, the governor's going to have a driver, which is oftentimes a state trooper. Sometimes when I've had governors on my radio show in the past, they've had an additional person that acts as security. Other than that, attorneys general will typically have security because of the nature of their job that they do. And I can't tell you, why in the hell would an IRS commissioner need security?
Because you're the head of the IRS.
Well, I mean, maybe so. Okay. But they wanted to go through the building in advance. We did have I'm trying to remember, we had a dog team come through one time in Birmingham. What was that about? It might have been a presidential candidate or something or another. One way or the other. So you had three. 1, 2, 3. Who were those three people?
One was going to be the driver. The other was the local agent who was in charge. And then the other was the D.C. agent who was traveling with the commissioner, if I remember correctly.
What do you think each of those individuals pockets on an annual basis? I'm just curious how much money they were making standing around talking to you yesterday.
I'd say 80 to, for the local guys, maybe 80, 90,000 a year. And for the D.C. guy, maybe 130.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I figured somewhere less than or more than $100,000 a year. And they felt it important enough to come out and scout the location. When is our interview for tomorrow, Bell?
It was supposed to be at 12:30.
But it has now been canceled.
It has now been completely canceled.
Why in the world? Something must have come up.
Yeah, his schedule changed.
Is that what
that was the quote. His schedule changed.
In other words, I know what happened. I know what happened. I think I know what happened. Do you guys think you know what happened?
And before we get too deep, the guys that came in yesterday, guys, very pleasant.
No, nobody's knock. I mean,
nothing negative to say about them at all. They were just doing their gig, but
yeah. I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
And they probably get as frustrated with this crap as anybody else, because they spent, an hour here with me yesterday for a reason that turned out to be non-existent.
What were they doing? I'm just genuinely curious. What were y'all doing for an hour?
Well, the first thing was discussing how he was going to get into the building, making sure they had immediate access. We also talked about, believe it or not, the last thing we discussed that Ryan, the kind of in charge guy, asked me was, just on the off chance of some Armageddon type event, is there a windowless room we could stash him in?
What?
Yeah.
This is not the lone survivor.
I'm sure he was just doing his job.
All contingencies.
Checking boxes.
All contingencies must be discussed. So, what did you find him a windowless room?
I did. We were going to commandeer Dave's studio.
Oh, that's a good idea, right? I mean, I bet that they didn't like the fact that was on the second floor, but okay, whatever. A windowless room for the IRS commissioner, whose name I still can't remember or pronounce.
Werfler.
Werfler?
Werfel.
Werfel. Can
we just call him Satan?
We're gonna take all your money and run back to DC.
So we went over the path in. We went over who was going to be here, where he would be with you, where I would be in relation to that. We went over alternate routes out of the building, where they could and couldn't park. And I reminded them, well, you guys do have badges. You can probably ignore the no parking signs out front.
Right. I did. I was there long enough to hear your discussion about how we make sure that once the IRS commissioner gets here, that he does not have to wait one little bit before immediately gaining access to the room or to the building.
Yeah.
And you were describing to him that, if you are down in the lobby, not you, the guy down in the lobby, then you can get him in the lobby. Then I'll give you my pass key, and your pass key will access you to any of these doors, et cetera, et cetera. And y'all were deep in conversation when I politely excused myself because I didn't want any part of that.
Don't blame you a bit.
Pardon me.
Bless you.
I had to sneeze. So, just talking about the IRS. So, did he ask you if you were affiliated with any conservative causes, Bell?
He asked me no political questions of any shape or form.
Here's what I think. What do you think really happened? So, their excuse was his schedule changed. Mm-hmm. So, I can think of a number of different things that might have happened. One, they realized that maybe they were under the mistaken impression that we were big time. And when they got here, they realized we were not, in fact, big time, and they decided that they had other people that they would rather talk to, maybe?
Well, we may not be big time in D.C., but we are big time in Nashville, and our listeners probably would have liked to have heard the lies that this guy was going to try to espouse.
4857 on the Members Nutrition Super Text line offers a pretty fair analysis, I think. Sounds like they were checking out WTN for a future IRS raid. Is it possible that you've been duped? Is it possible that I'll put me in the basket, have been duped? That they really wanted to get the lay of the land for this building because perhaps they're coming out. You know what? They're probably trying to go after the big money. That would be Wilson and Mandis, not me. And when they realize that Wilson doesn't, that's what it is. I think I figured it out. They're trying to lay a trap for big money Brian Wilson. And now that they figured out that he doesn't come in every day, that he broadcasts from his palatial studios in Watertown, they've decided the jig is up.
Well, yeah, it can't be a corporate thing because all the money and finance stuff for our company is out of Atlanta. So they'd have to be mucking around down there.
You never know. You never know how these shenanigans get started. Here's what I would guess. John says the restroom is a windowless room.
That is true.
Boy, oh boy, you go into that one windowless restroom down the hall there, you stay in there too long, you'll die from some sort of toxicity. But I digress. In all seriousness, we get three guys coming in here sweeping the thing. They want to come on. They asked to come on. They reached out to Bell K to come on. I'll interview anybody. Y'all know me. I'll talk to anyone. Liberal, conservative, leftist, right, up, down, shady, on the up and up. Doesn't matter to me. And the IRS commissioner, oh, yeah, I have some questions. I have absolute questions. The first set of questions would have been about the IRS and how the IRS became perceived as politicized and was, in fact, compromised and politicized during the Obama administration, and what efforts they went through between 2009, 2010, 2011, and today to make sure that wasn't happening again. Now, I would suggest to you that maybe, just maybe, that they did a little background on us.
It was either that or they got what they perceived to be a bigger name to interview him instead.
Well, I can't imagine that. I don't believe that there is a bigger name broadcasting at 12:30 in the afternoon on a Friday afternoon.
You got to remember, it's an issue of perception. Did they get a TV station to offer him time versus us? I mean, they don't. The person who I had all these discussions with about it, she was based out of D.C., so she doesn't know Nashville from her own ass.
Did you watch their hands?
Yes.
While they were here?
Yes.
Did you see any indication that they may have been planting listening devices?
No, but I didn't see anything that would have made me think they weren't.
You know what I'm saying? So maybe they're bugging the joint. Think about that.
Well, they don't need to bug the joint. We're going to talk about them like this behind the scenes, just like we do with the mics open.
You know, I think this is the beginning of the end for us, Bell, and I blame you, really.
It's okay. I'm ready to take the heat.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? You let these bugs into our building, and now who knows what all hell's going to break loose.
One of us is getting audited next year.
Man, I hope it's me.
I do too.
You know what I honestly think happened? I think that in their, they seem so buttoned down on the facility side of things. I think in the process of buttoning down the facility, and I'm not saying this for any reason other than I think that it's true. They did some background research on me, and they decided they didn't want me interviewing the IRS commissioner. I think that's what happened.
It's not, when you think about it, your immediate thought is, well, why didn't they do that in advance before they even bothered to offer the interview? And
that's not the way government works.
Well, it's government, so why wouldn't they wait till the last minute and then change everything?
That's not the way they work. Either that or there was something about, I would think if there was something about the facility they did not like, they would just say that. Hey, we did our walkthrough. Love you guys, willing to do something on the telephone at some future time, but there was this and that about the facility that we did not feel comfortable with, and we're going to have to move on.
And I'm sure that has to have happened more than one time in the process of a government security detail, doing a walkthrough.
I don't know. One way or the other, no IRS commissioner tomorrow. What fun that would have been.
But your taxes are still going to be due. So don't forget to give up your hard-earned fruits of your labor to the government so they can add it to the $34.5 trillion in debt we have.
It would have made a lot of sense. Tomorrow being April 5th, that's 10 days before the IRS filing deadline for most Americans. So we are sad to note that we will no longer be able to have that interview. But you know what? I look at it as a badge of honor, both for you and for me. Now, I could easily say that they looked at you and immediately recognized that this was an interview that never was going to happen. I could say that.
That is, I don't necessarily feel I can argue that point.
But
because I'm standing there with my earrings and my nose ring and my rock T-shirt on and my hair in a ponytail.
But I felt like they were still all in by the time I got there. I felt like they were engaged,
Mm-hmm. They seem, those guys are also probably, they do have some acting skills.
Professional liars.
Well, it's the IRS.
It is the IRS.
Thieves and liars, man.
The IRS act. The IRS is a government installation, and there are several of these types of government installations, by the way, that they act in every way in the same fashion as criminals.
Yes.
Everything they do is through force and through
coercion.
And coercion. That's right. That's the manner in which they just have the force of the federal government behind them when they do it.
We call it okay because a group of people passed a law saying it was okay.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Sadly, it was an amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America that I doubt will ever get repaired.
Oh, no. That amendment gives government way too much control over people to ever go away.
IRS scared of Mad Dog Murphy, writes Andy. Maybe. I don't know. I think they probably checked. You know what they did? They probably called Heidi Campbell and asked her thoughts on coming into studio to do an interview.
And she's like, well, you can go in there, but you're going to be asked to leave.
Mario says, check the text line for bugs. They're coming after the audience, maybe. Wanted a vacation in Nashville and needed an excuse, probably. Nobody else wants to talk to them, so they got suspicious, definitely. Aren't they allowed or trained to carry rifles? Certainly. And then a lot of you are saying that Brian Wilson is a double agent for some reason, and I don't know why that is, but I don't think that's so. I think he was the target of this sting investigation. I don't think he's a part of it. It's 12:24, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We're gonna talk about pornography on the internet in relation to our extended conversation with Cameron Smith yesterday. I'm doing that with you next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy for the Glock Store. By now, you know where it is. By now, you know what it is. And by now, you should have gone. And if you've not, shame on you. Let's get to the Glock Store together. The Glock Store is the biggest, the brightest, and the best when it comes to guns, ammunition, accessories, various types of weapons, long guns, short guns, all of those things that you know and love for your Second Amendment rights and beyond. Let's discuss what they've got going on this June because by popular demand, they've got the 4th annual open house coming on Saturday, June 1st. It'll be here before you know it. I just want you to mark your calendars and note it from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Where else can you go where they will give away up to over $10,000 worth of incredible prizes like the red dot optics from Vortex. I've got one of those Vortex red dots, and it is absolutely fabulous. Tritium-powered night sights, weapon lights with lasers from Nightstick, and on and on and on it goes. The raffle list just keeps going and going and going. If you aren't up to the task of winning a shooting competition, you can just enter to win a GS customized Glock. That's worth $2,000, and all you need to be there to win that is to enter, not to win. They have the fast and accurate competition is back as well, with the top shooter getting a Glock 19 all dressed up to show your Tennessee pride. It's all happening June 1st at the Glock Store. Glockstore.com or shoot270.com for more information. Stop by today at the Glock Store. You'll be happy you did. They're on off of Elm Hill Pike on Air Lane Drive. Tell them Matt Murphy sent you to the Glock Store. Dr. Paz and the Sleep Apnea and TMJ Solution Center is it's a lifesaver. I'm telling you, I'm not overstating the case when I say so. I've talked to Dr. Stephen Paz about the marriages he's saved and the lives he's saved with regard to mild to moderate sleep apnea. I mean, sadly, if sleep apnea gets bad enough, it can be threatening to your life in terms of your overall body health, when it comes to your heart, when it comes to blood pressure, and all of these types of things that can be affected by sleep apnea. I mean, high blood pressure, acid reflux, memory fog, diabetes, weight gain, the list goes on and on. 1/4 of all Americans, all adults who have sleep apnea are unaware of it. I was one of those individuals, and I went to Dr. Paz. I got myself a sleep study. I brought the results to Dr. Paz. He went over it, and he said, you have moderate sleep apnea. You need a device from the Dr. Paz Sleep Apnea and TMJ Solution Center. I'm now sleeping better. I feel more energetic when I get up in the mornings. Thank you to Dr. Paz. I believe you could be next in line. If you're CPAP intolerant or if you don't know why you're not sleeping as well as you feel you should, it's time to contact Dr. Paz and the Sleep Apnea and TMJ Solution Center. drpaz.com. That's drposs.com. Tell them Matt Murphy sent you. 2 locations to serve, and don't forget, they're in network with almost every major insurance company like BCBS, Aetna, Cigna, United Healthcare, and TRICARE for the military. It's Dr. Paz and the Sleep Apnea and TMJ Solution Center. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, fast approaching the, as we used to say, bottom of the hour. Jim has a thought on the IRS, and he's in Nashville. Hey, Jim, how are you?
It's Ken. Well, a couple of things here. Thanks for taking my call. I've talked to you before. I'm not a regular listener, but I do appreciate what you espouse. Anyhow, on the IRS, you're required to sign your 1040 form under the penalty of perjury. Well, that's tantamount to taking an oath. It's an maximum law that a person can't take an oath against his will. So I don't know why anyone, how they can enforce something that's really unconstitutional, but they do it anyhow. 16th Amendment, which gives, which caused the tax laws to come into existence, so-called tax laws. I'm not sure that it was ever legally ratified. There's been a lot of research on that, and I have my doubts about the legal ratification of that amendment. Number 3 would be that tax on income is a Marxist concept. If you read the 10 planks of communism, you see the number 2 plank is a graduated or an income tax, and that's a redistribution of the wealth. So again, here's something that we should not have, and I think this is done by congressmen that are compromised. I think most of them are. We have 9 members of the House of Representatives. We have 2 senators, but they can't keep illegal aliens out of our state, so they're worthless. I think term limits are in order. I feel like that maybe possibly that we ought to reduce the amount of money a politician makes, and no retirement funds, no perks, and get rid of lobbyists. That's my take. I'm thinking about running for Congress again. I did that back in 1990.
Yeah, did I have your name? Or you said it was Ken?
Yeah.
Ken. Okay. We've talked. My apologies.
I'm too old to run for Congress, but I'm gonna run it. I'm gonna run it anyhow. So.
Well, you bring up a lot of good points and good talking points. I've turned a corner on term limits over the years, sadly, because incumbency brings so much money and power with it that it's not oftentimes a fair fight when individuals try to battle the power of incumbency. Sadly, what you don't eliminate with term limits, you don't eliminate the power of the bureaucracy, and that's really the problem in Washington, D.C. It's not even Congress people that get up there and get Washingtonized, although that's part of it. The bureaucratic deep state that exists in Washington, D.C. is I mean, these are permanent bureaucrats that look at the elected officials that they, quote unquote, work for as temporary problems. They believe, I mean, genuinely, and I've had Congress people tell me this, they believe they're in charge. The elected officials aren't in charge. So you actually make that problem worse, not better with term limits. But that's just one aspect of what you brought up. It's a very.
What the Speaker of the House just did. And the Speaker of the House, he should be a Democrat.
I'm sorry?
The Speaker of the House, look what he just did. I mean, he should be a Democrat. I mean, he's not supporting the traditional Republican cause. I mean.
Well, the Republicans that have been elected to go to Congress and represent the United States of America voted him as Speaker of the House.
Too bad.
Well, I mean, who do you want?
Oh gosh, maybe green.
You're not going to get Mark
South
Green.
Carolina. Well, if you ask me, who I
Well, I mean, you're not. I mean, well, you. Well, it's a deeper subject. No, I respect and appreciate the conversation. I can't have it right now. I've got to get to a break. I apologize, Ken. I thought we were specifically talking about the IRS, and you brought up a lot of other subjects that merit a longer and deeper conversation that we don't have time for now. It's 12:34 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I do appreciate the call. Hey, kids, it's Matt Murphy, and let's talk about your health with relation to the pills that you're taking or perhaps the vitamins and the supplements that you're taking. I'm a big believer, and this is just me talking to you folks, that most of what we need to repair issues within our body, especially when it comes to preventative maintenance, comes from God's green earth. I believe that. I see it on a daily basis, and I take vitamins and supplements on a daily basis. Now, I'm getting most of those from membersnutrition.com. Membersnutrition.com is a brand new organization. They are right here in the state of Tennessee and beyond, and they are dedicated to two things. One, getting you good products, high-quality products for less money than you get at the big box stores. Secondarily, making sure that everything they do is made right here and manufactured right here in the good old USA. I mean, they have many different products to choose from, and if you go to membersnutrition.com, you can see some of the categories of supplements and vitamins that they have. They have anti-aging products, detox supplements, energy supplements, relaxation, men's health, women's health, immune boosting, sports nutrition, and weight management. All available for you in one convenient location, and all for less money than you're going to pay at the big box stores. You don't have to pay a lot to get a lot when it comes to nutrition, vitamins, and supplements. And understand, membersnutrition.com is here for you. They're not trying to upsell you on anything. They just want to get you the good products that you need swiftly and for less money, and it's what they do. I buy from them, and I encourage you to do that as well. Membersnutrition.com. That's membersnutrition.com. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It's Matt Murphy and you. Thank you for being around this afternoon. Hope you're doing well. We've got 2 hours and 20 minutes to go. Pardon me, I was in the midst of something as I was preparing to come back on the air and just want to finish that up. Very good. All right, 615-737-9986 if you'd like to be a part of the show. 615-737-9986. You can either utilize the phone lines, you're invited to do that, or you can utilize the super text line, which is up and running and brought to you by our good friends at Members Nutrition. Sally wants to know if something's wrong with the WTN app. Sally, I do not know, but I will endeavor to try to find out. 4200 says term limits kicks out the good and the bad. Net effect is more bad. More importantly, term limits voting choices. It's the reason I've long been against term limits. I can be turned on the issue. I understand the other side of the issue, and I don't, take this broad stand against it. But I have been to D.C. enough to know that the deep state, the bureaucratic state, exists exterior to the elected politicians. When elected politicians come in, they inherit, they can control their own staff, but they inherit the bureaucracy, and the bureaucracy is always there. I've had congressmen tell me when they are trying to push certain initiatives or they're trying to control their own congressional hearings or congressional meetings, they're told by staff members. Obviously, these are higher-up staff members, but staff members nonetheless. That's not the way we do it here. I'll name names. Congressman Gary Palmer told me that once. Congressman Gary Palmer's like fourth in line in terms of leader. He's a part of the leadership team. He is the chairman of the Republican Party caucus, and the policy chair of the Republican Party caucus. I didn't say that correctly. And he tells me that he's looked at a couple of years ago by some staffer that's controlling a meeting, and, we don't do that here. What? Understand, folks, the bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. thinks that they own the show, and they won't change. And when you have neophytes coming in on the regular because of term limits, it's just going to get worse, not better. We don't talk about that downside of term limits very often, but it is true. Lindsay wants to know if I jumped ship. I have no idea what that means, Lindsay. You have to use your words.
You jumped a shark.
I'm not trying to be hard on Lindsay, but when you just randomly text me, Lindsay, you're a long enough listener to the show. When you just randomly text me and say, "Did you jump ship?" Are you talking about? Oh, I know what she's talking about. I just figured it out. Thank you, Lindsay. I just figured it out. Because I'm wearing a vest today because it was a little chilly outside this morning, Lindsay wants to know. Lindsay always has a lovely thought about my attire on the Super Talk television side of things. And I was getting all nasty about it.
Is she being facetious?
Well, she's saying that my vest looks like a life preserver.
Oh, okay.
Which I don't really think it does. But
I do like the plaid shirt, though. That's pretty cool.
Well, thank you, Belle. I appreciate that. It goes with anything.
Yeah, I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
I got to go get some picky.
Okay. I'll be here. I'll be right here with the folks. I'll see you later. Don't mind me. What is the function of the bureaucracy? 0589 writes. Well, it is ostensibly it's designed to run government. The bureaucracy is a byproduct of how incredibly large and dysfunctional our federal government truly has become. And the bureaucracy now feeds upon itself. You have to have agencies layered upon agencies, layered upon other agencies, layered upon bureaucratic, diplomatic. It's just nonsense. It's a lot of nonsense. We don't need it. I understand you have to have a staff, and most of it is in the executive branch. And most of it in the executive branch is because Congress does not on the regular do its job. Okay? Congress, for a long time, and let me just kind of lay this out there where the goats can graze on it. Congress is to do what as a branch of government? Its function is to make the law. We elect the People's House, the House of Representatives, and a body that was originally designed to represent the states. That would be the Senate. The Senate no longer represents the states. Sadly, the state of Tennessee has less representation in Washington, D.C. right now than Uzbekistan. And I say that with all the love in the world for Marsha Blackburn and Bill Hagerty. But when you created the direct election of senators, those senators went to represent, sadly, the people at the federal level, and by proxy, they are representing the federal government to the people of the state of Tennessee, as opposed to what the design was, and that is to protect the state of Tennessee against the encroachment of the federal government, and they're no longer doing that. It's why the federal government has grown to the size that it's grown to, because there's no failsafe. There's nobody up there saying, this is not your job. Nor has it ever been. If I were king of the world, if I were king, there's a lot that I would do. If I were king for a day and I could only do one or two things, this might be a good question, an open-ended question for a Friday without Jay St. Clair. If I gave you one or two things that you could do with regard to government of the United States of America, what would you do? Off the top of my head, my first two things are this. I would demand a balanced budget amendment, whereas the government of the United States of America could not spend more than it brings in on an annual basis. This would bind our elected officials to do one or of two things, either spend less or tax us more. Period. Balanced budget amendment is what I would do first, because I believe the greatest existential crisis and the thing that will kill the United States of America, probably before I leave this mortal coil, will be our burdensome debt. Number two, and I could easily flip-flop this to number one. I've long said that it's number one, but I've begun to believe that our debt is more important, is the 17th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. I would repeal it. I would repeal it immediately. I would take it back to its original intent by our founding fathers. Now, for those not familiar, the 17th Amendment is the one that created the direct election of senators by the people of the various states. And sadly, an unintended consequence of this is that those senators then began to understand that the best and easiest way to get them re-elected was to bring from the largesse of the federal government treasury money back to the various states that they represent. It encourages spending at the federal level. It encourages action at the federal level. Because in order for me to tell you that I'm being a good senator, if I'm looking to the people for their vote, I have to demonstrate that I'm bringing some honey home. Y'all get what I'm saying? Prior to that, for those of you in Aniana, I know most of you know this. Prior to that, senators were elected by whom? The various state legislatures or general assemblies of the states. So who did those senators answer to? They answered to the general assemblies. They answered to the legislature. And in doing so, anything that they did on a federal level that somehow encroached upon the powers of the state, they were risking their jobs. And so the balance between the power of the federal government and the power of the state government was good, and it was equitable. And as a matter of fact, the states that created the supremacy of the federal government had a little leverage against the federal government at that time. But in the spirit of getting the vote closer to the people, what we did, in effect, was tip the balance of power way to the side of the federal government and look at the consequence 90 years later. Or I guess it's more than that now. When was 17 done? I want to say, Bell K, fact check me on the 17th Amendment. I'm going to say that the 17th Amendment was passed in ratified in 19 and 17 or 19 and 16. Bel K currently not fact-checking me on this information because he's too busy talking with Scott Zippy. That's okay. That's all right.
Look, this man has the police power of the state hanging over my head.
If you don't talk to him, you get thrown in the... I get it. I understand.
So what do you need from me? What can I do for you?
I wanted you to fact-check me on something.
Okay, what do you need fact-checking on?
On the ratification of the 17th... Here's a sentence I never thought I would say. Hey, Bell, fact-check me on the ratification of the 17th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America. I'm thinking it was like 1916, 1917, 1918, somewhere in that zone. I'm going to give myself a 3-year window.
April 8th, 1913.
13?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I was off.
Was that part of the creation of the Federal Reserve?
No, it was. What it ultimately did was it created a cascade effect by which the federal government continued to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow and grow and grow.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
So if I could do two things, one, balanced budget amendment, and two, repeal of the 17th, although now that I think about it, if you repeal the 17th Amendment and bring that back to the states where it ought to be and get better representation from the states, I think you'd see the balanced budget amendment happen anyway. Because most of the states, friends, are sick of it. They're sick of the overspending. James has a thought on all of this out of Mont Eagle. Hey, James, how are you?
I'm great, and thank you for taking my call.
Well, of course.
And thank you for talking about and explaining the 17th Amendment. I've talked to you about this before. The founders were very, very clear about the balance of power, and that's why the states had the senators, was to balance the power. 17th Amendment totally destroyed that. That's not why I called you, though. But thank you so much for explaining that, because most people have no idea about that. Needs to be repealed immediately. That's the number one thing I do. What I called you about was I think that it says an awful lot about the deep state and about the Biden administration that we are trying to arm IRS agents and disarm American citizens. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, you're right, James, and it's not unintentional, my friend. You put those two together and you start getting the picture. You start getting the grand design. They need an unarmed population and an armed military wing or domestic militaristic wing of the federal government through the executive branch. That is intentional, my friend. It's 12:53, Super Talk 99.7 WT, and I promised I'd get to porn. There's also another sentence I didn't think I would say today, and we'll do so next. I don't know about you guys. Heat was on this morning. I mean, rightly so. Wind chill down in the lower levels. It was chilly. And then this afternoon, or at least by tomorrow, we'll have the AC back on. It's that time of year, and we know that. Jeff Eddy knows that. Efficient Heating and Cooling knows that, and they want to speak with you. Have you maintenance to that AC yet? If not, there's still plenty of time to do so. We encourage it. Look, I'm not here to upsell you on maintenance. I'm here to tell you what happens when you don't. And this is a big investment, right? I mean, your AC has a life cycle. Like your automobile has any electronic device or any device of a mechanical nature is going to have a life cycle to it. And you're going to outlive that AC, odds are. And what if I told you that if you don't maintenance that unit, and Jeff Eddy will tell you the same, that you could be losing years. A lot of time off the life of the unit. What was normally a 15 or a 20-year unit could become a 10 or a 15-year unit. Efficient Heating and Cooling offers a low price point for maintaining your unit. This is what they promise. They're not going to charge you over $125 no matter how many AC units you have, no matter how many maintenance units you need to make sure that they're working properly. They'll come out, they'll get it done. Oftentimes it's for much less than that, but that's their upper end cap on it for a residential call. So call Jeff Eddy, get the thing maintenance, make sure that you're getting maximum life out of your AC. Do this today, 615-784-4424, 784-4424, or efficienthvac.net. That's efficienthvac.net. I want to talk to you about your health plan and your healthplanman.com. If you pay for your own health insurance or if you're looking for coverage, don't go online looking for quotes. You'll get endless telephone calls from call centers. You'll get endless emails. They will not stop. Instead, call the expert. Call your concierge, yourhealthplanman.com. Pat Davis and his team of experts have decades of experience combing the health insurance plans that you don't know anything about and making sure that they're up to speed on all of the plans available to you. They don't have to shop with any specific plans. They shop across the board, and they will provide sound advice for your health insurance needs. Their Freedom of Choice plan, for example, lets you pick your doctors. It's 30 to 60% lower in cost than Obamacare. Monthly premiums are independent of your income, so there's no surprise tax bill come tax time. If you pay for your own health insurance, if you are uninsured, if you're on COBRA, or if your employer insurance is just too expensive, go ahead and make this call. You don't have to wait to open enrollment. You can get this done now if you qualify through yourhealthplanman.com. That's the website, yourhealthplanman.com. Spell it all out. Here's the number, 855-4-PLAN-MAN. Call Pat today, 855-475-2662 for yourhealthplanman.com. It is the Matt Murphy Radio Show, Super Talk 99.7 WTN, and a good afternoon to you, 104 on this Thursday afternoon, cruising through a Thursday. Happy to have you with us. I have an announcement about our Monday show. I had some preparations in place, but my preparations are now changing rapidly because of a change in schedule for Monday. I'm going to do that in the 2 o'clock hour this afternoon on Super Talk. I'll tell you all of what's going on next week. Now, Monday is the day of the big eclipse.
I thought that was the day we had the IRS commissioner on.
No, that was tomorrow, and you failed to deliver on your promise that the IRS commissioner would be in studio. You do. By the way, we'll get into all of those things. When I first got into radio, there was a big joke. I mean, the joke still goes around. Face made for radio, right? Oh, well, at least you don't have to be on television. Well, a lot of that's changed with the merging of the internet and radio broadcast, and now we have the television side of things, Super Talk TV up and running every single day. Many of you watch on Super Talk TV. I don't know why you do, but you do. And these Thursday visits with our next guest have become particularly special for some of you because by the time Thursday rolls around, they're waiting to look at a good-looking man on their television. And here he is. Without further ado, and this week you're not going to get bumped by a fellow politician. You're not going to get bumped by an adorable high school child. It's just me and you. Representative Scott Zippy back on Thursday for a legislative roundup. Hello, Scott.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hey, there you go. You get the big applause. You're looking good.
Thank you very much. My wife dressed me.
Well, I mean, that's the best way. That's the best way to go. I'm going to move this light so we can actually see one another. We make great advances in the studio. Scott saw me lose my mind because my entire television broadcasting unit just fell. And Sapicki, knowing that I was annoyed, do you want to tell everybody what you said to me while I was like...
Well, you were trying to figure out where it was going to go on the post it sits on, and I said, just get a marker out next time and mark the top of it. You know where it goes.
And I said, thanks, Scott. I appreciate your help.
Hey, be careful with the IRS, though, because you're assuming you're going to be on the air Monday.
That's true.
You know.
So they come in, they make this big deal of hitting us up. I don't know if you listened, but they hit us up. They asked us if we wanted to interview the commissioner of the IRS who's going to be in town. Okay, sure. And Bell, it's like 28 emails back and forth, and they have to come in and do this sweep of the building, which is ridiculous.
Looking for Dan Mandis.
I mean, or Brian Wilson. The money. I mean, they're looking for the money guys, right? Mm-hmm. And there's like 3 of them doing the sweep yesterday, and they do this whole sweep. They meet me briefly, and then today, this morning, they say, we're not doing the interview.
So you were the last person they met?
I think that's accurate. Is that accurate, Bell? Was I the last one they met?
I hadn't put it in those terms, but he may be onto something.
Inquiring minds would like to know.
I think they talked to Heidi.
Maybe I'll start asking you questions.
Come on, let's go.
Do you have anything to hide from the IRS?
I do not. I'm an open book. It's a tawdry book, especially in the beginning chapters.
Yeah, because we're talking about porn today.
Well, we are talking about porn today, but for a different reason. So no IRS interview. But do you have any special plans for the eclipse Monday?
I'll be in session.
Okay, so
we'll be working.
You'll be blinded.
I'll be
by the one way or the other.
You're not going to have a break just to go outside and watch it?
Oh, they will.
While we are working for the people of Tennessee, we are dedicated.
So you are going to have a break then?
Yes.
I was going to go. I was planning on doing my show on the roof. But now I am. Brian Wilson, I think, is going out of state. He wants to get to the totality zone.
So he can do it in the dark.
So he can do his show in the dark, but he's not doing his show on Monday. He's going to be on the road, so I'll be shifting over there. So that's the big announcement.
Okay.
All right, let's talk. Obviously, we need an update on education. I know we're at a point where I think everyone kind of has a grasp of what the goal here is. Everyone has developed. All the citizens of the state of Tennessee that are informed, I think, are starting to develop their opinions about it. Mm-hmm. Where do you think most of this state are? By percentage, what would you say the state tells you with regard to the issue of the Freedom Scholarship Fund?
Well, not to make my assistant very angry, but we've been tracking this, the pros and cons as they come into the office, and it's leaning at about 65 to 70% in support.
Okay.
And that's not scientific, but we just track the people that are calling in to say pro or con. I think once people understand that there's multiple bills out there and what the House's version does, I think people start to realize yes, there are opportunities for school choice. There are parameters that have put on the House bill to make sure that it's not abused. There's not fraud or waste. Opportunity is created. Then I think they see what we're trying to do for public education to get that transformation transformed also, so that we can start to unlock the Matt, the senators that have been here and the representatives in 2010, when our educational system was not very good, and people know it, and it was a fact, and they put a lot of things in place to right the ship, right, stabilize the ship, let's get it headed in the right direction. And they did that. They accomplished that. We are about where we are. We've been there for about a decade. But now it's time to unshackle education in Tennessee and let's take it to the next level. And that's what we're trying to do. And I think the people of Tennessee are starting to understand what we're trying to do. And I think you're starting to see a groundswell of support of people saying, let's get this done.
At its most basic, the differences between the House and the Senate, and I took away something that you said to me several weeks ago, and I have characterized it in this way, and I hope I'm doing it justice, that the House of Representatives looks at the Freedom Scholarship Fund as a part of some education reforms that they want to see happen this year in the General Assembly.
That's correct.
The Senate's looking at this as kind of more of a standalone, let's do the scholarship, the Freedom Scholarship Fund, and while some of these ideas that the House are bringing up with regard to education reform, we want to do those too, but we don't want to do them necessarily together. And that's where we are negotiating how much reform we can include in the scholarship package and to get these bills together.
That's correct. We, as a House, it's our job as chairman, we have to sell the why behind what we're doing, right? It's not the what, it's the why. And so we have to talk to our Senate colleagues, because unless they match, it doesn't happen. We have to talk to our Senate colleagues, and we're doing that right now. We've been doing it for the last 2 weeks, trying to explain the why behind what we're doing for public education, the why what we're doing behind the school choice, and then trying to listen to hear what they have to say, and then try to incorporate it into a bill that both sides can get behind and help us change education in Tennessee.
How close are we? Just give us a status report. Where we are.
I think I was probably 50-50 a week and a half ago, 60-40. I think I'm at 70-30, 75-25. It's going to pass. We're going to get agreement.
And you believe that will do without conference committee? Can you make that happen without having to go to conference?
Well, I can't. Whatever comes out of finance will be agreed upon by the House and Senate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, somebody could put an amendment on the floor, and then we've got to figure that out. But the intention is that whatever comes out of finance committee, this is what's been agreed upon, so that the members can look at the legislation and vote one time.
Fair enough. Those concerns on the part of our conservative friends, I always like to bring this up because we have new listeners every time we talk, and many of you have heard these conversation points in the past, but I want to bring them back up. Liberals are acting insane. I mean, let's be honest. Their central claim is that Scott Zippy and the rest of the Republicans that want to do this for families in the state of Tennessee are doing this for the purpose of destroying public education. And it's sad that that's where they are, because they could be, I think, valuable voices in the discussion if they chose to be, and they choose not to be. So I kind of dismiss them.
Well, you can be in the room or out of the room. If you choose to be, I guess obnoxious is the word, because none of that data is supported at any state. There are no public schools that are closing. There's no funding that's being diverted from public schools, because if you look at all the states that have, look at Wisconsin, where I went to school, they've had school choice forever, and their public education system is top 10 in the country.
And by the way, I would suggest, and you've said as much, that the design of this scholarship is to create something of a more competitive environment to encourage the public education system to get better. Yeah. The design is to get better public education results.
That's correct. And when Wisconsin did this, the public education system looked inward at themselves with the help of their General Assembly, crafted legislation to free them up to get more creative in education in public schools. And guess what? They vaulted from 30th to top 10.
And the concern on the other side, the one that I do want to address, is this concern that it will give government an opportunity to further regulate private education.
Yeah, that's not true at all there, Matt. In the House version of the bill, we put parameters in place to keep a buffer between government and these private schools. Third-party vendor, we are being prescriptive on exactly what they can ask for from these private schools in regards to just the student that is taking the scholarship, so that we can track the academic success of those students as they go through their career. And then we also put parameters in place to prevent the pop-ups like you saw in Arizona that just ballooned the budget out of sight, that you have to be in existence for 3 years, you have to be accredited. We put caps on it. We've got income qualifications for it to help the most disadvantaged first, but then open it up to everybody in the state. Hey, let the ones that are trapped in these failing schools around within a mile of us sitting here in your studio, give them an opportunity to find a better outcome for their education. And if they can, great. But let's also fund the public schools. By the way, nobody's talking about this. In the House's version, we're increasing funding to public education $400 million.
The other question I get on that line, where's the money coming from then? If we're not taking from public ed, where's this $140 million or there? Yeah, I mean, I know it'll be a little more than that.
That's a great question. And so when you look at the budget, our treasurer says, okay, we're going to see X amount of growth in the state. And I think they budgeted close to 6% last year. Well, we didn't hit 6%, but I think we hit 2%. So there's more money coming in. And what the governor knew what he wanted to do was with the school choice, he had that budgeted for it. Plus we had another $240 million increase automatically in the governor's budget for public schools. We also found some extra money laying around that was not being allocated to anything. That's recurring, that we decided to say, hey, let's do some more things for public schools on helping for maintenance, helping rural schools, because here's the problem, Matt. If we don't do something for our rural districts, the bleed off from teachers moving to other districts that can pay more continues to happen. So we've created a system that will be able to help those rural districts maintain their best teachers so that we can create more opportunities across the state for all teachers.
Let's talk the politics of all of this.
Sure.
How many votes you got in the House right now, you think?
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know? You know.
I'm worried about finance sub right now.
So you're just taking it as it comes.
One step at a time.
How do you eat an elephant, right?
We're 1-0. And we're just going to continue to try to be 1-0 and win every committee we go through.
But there are back-channel discussions between the House and the Senate ongoing. Is that fair?
I believe that if you see a bill that both the Senate and the House agree upon that goes to the floor, not only will we have stuff for public schools, but we'll have that off-ramp for some to want to take advantage of school choice.
Scott Zippy with us for about 15 or so more minutes. Let's talk some other issues involving Tennessee teachers. Tennessee teachers could be allowed, reading from the Tennessee Star here, and Michael Patrick Leahy, could be allowed to carry firearms while on school property. The state Senate poised to vote on legislation allowing faculty and staff to carry concealed weapons if they are licensed, trained, and undergo a psychiatric evaluation. The Senate Judiciary Committee voted to advance the bill 1325, which would authorize school faculty and or staff members to, quote, carry a concealed handgun on school grounds subject to certain conditions, including obtaining an enhanced handgun carry permit and completing annual training. Obviously, this is in the Senate. I don't know if it obviously it has a companion somewhere in the House. Where is it in the House? What do you know about the Senate bill, and what are your thoughts on this?
So, Ryan Williams, we passed this bill last session. It's on the House floor. So we held it because the Senate didn't move it last year. So you don't
have to go through the committee process.
No, we've already had it sitting on the House floor for over a year waiting to be voted on.
Well, there you go.
And so a lot of those things you read off in there about the training and the mental evaluations, those were things that we put on in the education committee to make sure that we have people that are properly trained in the crisis situations that they'd be faced with. We put in there to make sure that they have to get approval from the sheriff or the head law enforcement agent, and also from the director of schools to make sure that this is someone that is qualified to go in there and carry a firearm. We wanted to make sure that they had a mirror's reflection of what an SRO officer looks like, so that we could make sure that that person is adequately trained in the event of a catastrophe to help stop it, because we all know, and you can look at Covenant, and Metro Nashville did a fantastic job of how quickly they responded. But if there was someone in that building that had a firearm and knew how to use it and was trained, we could have limited the loss of life.
Yeah, it's a sad reality that the Covenant School, being a private school, they had an individual who was on vacation, and that person had been trained and had been authorized to have a firearm in their possession on property, and they weren't there. I mean, it's sad to say, but it is true.
And if there were other people there that
but
he was on
but had there
vacation?
been others, that's right. So here's the way I envision this happening in the real world. I think that there are plenty of these types of individuals that I'm about to describe. We're talking about Second Amendment advocates who happen to be history teachers or gym teachers or coaches or assistant principals, male, female, I don't care, but people that are already familiar with firearms, that are comfortable in their use and to keep and to carry, that would jump at the opportunity to be that person, that point person within a system. So you're not talking about somebody that's afraid of guns, having to have a gun on their person. No one's being forced to do this. I think there are plenty of those instructors embedded in the school system right now that would jump at the chance to have that ultimate ability to protect their students. God forbid they have to.
The key is there to protect their students. The most vulnerable population that we have that's out there that is susceptible to this is our student populations. And so, yes, I agree with you. I think these individuals are ones that will be eagerly to go through the training, to go through the background checks, to go through the mental evaluations, to make sure that in a crisis situation they have the proper training and background to be able to respond appropriately to a crisis that erupts in a school. And it's going to happen again. We're going to have another crisis in a school. It's just where we are right now, unfortunately, in life. And we got to have people there to respond.
The reaction on the part of some of your friends to the left, typical. How do you respond to some of their reaction? They want... And we were talking about this a little before we came back on air. They are playing psychological warfare when it comes to guns, and they want to anthropomorphize guns in a certain way, and that guns are always evil. And anytime you introduce a gun in a situation, that's always a bad thing to do. And they've been insisting upon this to our small children for a long time now. Thankfully, we have good law-abiding citizens that believe in the Second Amendment and believe in the right to self-defense that teach differently. But they are just beside themselves at even the suggestion that you would introduce guns into the school setting. Now, you and I both know that SRO presence is already an introduction. How do you respond to them, though? What do you say to them?
Well, I'm really perplexed at their position, because when we ran the SRO grant program for public and private schools that the state would pay for one SRO in every school across the state of Tennessee, it passed with bipartisan support. When we ran the school safety grant, which was for cameras and the resistant film and better security measures to protect our children, bipartisan support. This part of the bill is another piece of the puzzle, Matt. There's no one magic bill to stop this, but it's putting layers of protection here, getting teachers who volunteer to do this, who are properly trained, go through the backgrounds, go through the continuing ed certifications every year, right? Let's put another layer of protection there. Let's try to make sure that we have people that are there to respond in the event of a tragedy that can stop this quickly. If you could have stopped the shooter at Covenant at the door, we wouldn't have been talking about the loss of life.
22 after the hour, quick timeout. Many of you bringing some questions to the table through the Members Nutrition Super Text line. I'm going to filter those questions through the Members Nutrition Super Text line right directly to Scott Sapicki in just a moment. It's 122 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hey, friends. Mill Creek, Tennessee is now Heartland Journals, and I want you to know about it. You know, Steve Abramowitz has been around for some time, and he is now rebranding Mill Creek View, Tennessee to Heartland Journal, and I couldn't be more excited about it because it truly is what he does. It is a journal of the Heartland, not to be too obvious about it, but that's what Steve's been doing for some time now since he's been in Middle Tennessee. He interviews artists and authors, cultural touchstones, entertainment figures, sports figures, and of course, he talks about politics. Frequently, they're the #1 show in politics on Podomatic. They're found on Deezer, iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, all of your favorite podcast apps, and you can also find them on Rumble Video. Obviously, Steve is not just the host of the podcast, but he's also editor-in-chief of what was formerly known as the Mill Creek View newspapers, now known as Heartland Journal. So I encourage you to get over to Heartland Journal to find out more about what they're doing over there. I love the website. I go on a day-to-day basis to make sure that I'm up to date with what news that Steve and his team are talking about. So you go, I'm doing it right now as I speak. You go to Heartland Journal, and you pop in the thing there, and there you go, heartlandjournal.com, heartlandjournal.com. It's Steve Abramowitz and the brand new Heartland Journal. Check it out. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. So yesterday we learned of this. I was unaware that this was legislation that was moving through the Senate and I suppose the House of Representatives as well. It was a pornography website bill that would require adult pornographic websites that are in the state of Tennessee, that's the easiest way to say it, to verify the age of those viewing those websites in this state. It has now advanced in the Senate. There was a brief change to it regarding cost of implementation or whatnot. The amended version of the bill has a fiscal note of somewhere in the neighborhood of a couple of $1 million a year. But this would create a dynamic by which parents believe that they would have additional tools, state provided, to prevent their children from viewing pornographic websites. Scott Sapicki, what say you on this bill?
So 73% of teens in a national survey responded that ages 13 to 17 have watched pornography, 13 to 17. And 54% of those under the age of 13 said that's when they watched it was before the age of 13. Pornography is a scourge on our society. It destroys families. It destroys the emotional stability of a young child. It deteriorates their ability to have relationships with people because it sets unreal expectations on what relationships look like, and it's not a function of the real world. And so I can give you chapter and verse about how pornography destroys lives. I'm not even going to go there. I don't
think we need to, because I think we agree on
right.
on all of those points.
And one of the things we want to do is to be very careful of big government. Be very careful. How can we do this in a way that still puts the parents or the individual in charge, right? And so what we did was, you have to verify your age to access these sites in Tennessee. And if you're over the age of 18, then you can do whatever you want. It's not a problem. If you're under the age, then no, you can't. And to prevent Matt Murphy, just as an example, to prevent Matt Murphy from using his ID and then allowing a minor to get on there after you leave, you have to redo it every hour to make sure that it's Matt Murphy who's still on there. And so we tried to work through this. My gut feeling is you'll probably see some legislation after the Homeland Security of Tennessee gets a hold of this, and they start to look at the application and practicality of the law. I would be willing to bet you we'll probably have a cleanup bill next year to probably look at the process.
My default position is to default to, is this the government's job? Mm-hmm. And is government doing something that others could be doing better, or that is the responsibility or role of other people? In this case, it would be the parents.
Right.
And I'm stuck on that right now.
So I'm 57 years old, right? When we grew up, I don't know how old you are. How old are you, man?
I'm 50.
50.
Yes.
There was really only two.
But I look 57, so.
You're a lot older than that. But anyway, that's a different story. When you were younger, there were really only two avenues for pornography. It was either text, like a Playboy or something like that, or a show you would go to. It was very limited access. And so parents had the ability at all times to know where you were. Right. But with the advent of this magical little device right here, you've brought all of the good of the world to a child's eyes, and all of the evil in the world to a child's eyes without any type of access denial to it. And so
it's already impermissible. It's already illegal for someone under the age of 18 to access these sites.
And I know nobody ever breaks the law.
Well, and I think that I don't think that this will stop what's going on. It might make it harder. I certainly don't think it, and I don't think anyone's claiming that it would universally stop underage children from figuring out ways to access this. And my concern is that this will not stop in terms of government overreach. And here's my concern with it. And I don't disagree with anything you're saying about pornography. And I probably misrepresented my position a little bit yesterday because I was arguing with Cameron Smith about this, and I was arguing against government overreach. But first, I don't know how you catch all of these flies that are going to come around the net, because you can catch these big companies that are making large amounts of money. But I know, and we all know, that there are endless websites, endless URLs, endless ways that they can jump around this. That's a concern. So the reason it's a concern is that when that becomes apparent that we have not caught the flies, government's going to try to catch the flies, and they're going to continue to work I think that this is leading. I want to jump to the chase. And I'm not against having this conversation. Age verification for the internet.
Mm-hmm.
For the internet, not for pornographic websites altogether. I want to know what age you are if you are looking at the internet.
Yes.
I mean that seems like government overreach, but isn't that kind of where we're going?
It kind of bumps up against it. And I'm not arguing with you on your position.
No. I'm not arguing with you.
Yes, you bring up a valid point, and I think that's where we have to be very cautious where we go with this. Your fly analogy, right? If you know anything about a barnyard, you don't have to catch one fly. You just got to follow the fly. It'll lead you to the source. And there'll be other flies there. And so with Homeland Security here, with the technology we have, we can let one fly lead us to the problem, and then we can figure out where the problem is and solve it. That's what I think we're trying to do here is create the necessary eyes to look at the problem and figure out where it is, and then come back to us and say, hey, here's how we fix this.
Yeah, and the other question is obviously who decides what is and what is not pornography.
That's the Miller test, sir. That was set forth by the Supreme Court, and
wasn't that I know it when I see it.
That's the answer, because it's
the community standard
right.
test.
It's a community standard test because in different communities, pornography is going to mean different things to different people, and so you got to have that.
Yeah, but y'all got to write that down. Is a naked woman pornography?
Depends in the situation. That's why if you read the Miller test, it talks about the prurient nature.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. But we have to figure out what our community standard as a state's going to be before we move forward to this. Is this happening this year, you think? Or do you think it'll get kicked to next session?
It's already passed. According to what I'm looking right here, it's already passed the House.
Has it passed the Senate, though, is my question.
I think it's up for vote.
Well, we'll see. All right. Some questions for Sapicki after the break?
Can we get off of pornography for a while?
Yeah, we will. No, we're going to have questions unless the people want to ask about pornography.
And then there's one announcement I want to make before we go.
All right, we'll take a quick time out. I've got questions for Sapicki. A lot of you have lined up your questions, concerns, comments. We'll do that next. It's Scott Sapicki on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. When it comes to large home repairs, there's a lot of times homeowners pretend we don't see what we absolutely see, and one of those situations will come up from time to time with regard to your foundation or waterproofing of your home. Maybe not for you, but for a family member. You'll hear it, you'll see it. If you smell a musty smell in the basement and you don't think anything of it, oh, it rained a lot the other day, that must be what it is. Well, think about what you're saying. It rained a lot, and now you're smelling musty odors inside of your house? That means you've got a waterproofing problem, and that waterproofing problem is not going to stop. Water will not quit until it wins, and it considers a win destroying the foundation of your home. Let's put a stop to all of this. Let's fight back with USS, United Structural Systems. When they come to your home, they are problem solvers. They're not trying to sell you anything. They want to identify the problem in your home, get to the root of the problem, and fix it jiffy quick before it gets worse. They've been doing this since 1994. For the last 30 years, they've satisfied over 25,000 customers in Middle Tennessee and Southern Kentucky. Now it's your turn. Let's get with USS, United Structural Systems. Go to USSTN.com to find out the telltale signs of foundation or waterproofing issues. That's USSTN.com, or call today, 615-488-7855, 488-7855 for USS. Supertalk 99.7 WTN. I've had my turn. It's now your turn to ask questions for Sapicki. It is our funny and fun name for your questions on the Members Nutrition Super Text line of Scott Sapicki. And so I'm going to rattle some of these off for you, Scott, and find out where you are on it. And I have to work through a lot of the conversations that are going on exterior to our certain conversation. Hey, Matt, how is this bill going to work with PlayStation and Xbox devices? My kids are all adults now, but when they were younger, they had parental settings on our phones and computers. So you have to define the parameters of what constitutes a pornographic website. And then once that's defined, the AG is going to be in charge of enforcing and I'm sure there's state agencies that'll create the dynamic that, Texas did this, yes. I think. Yes, Louisiana, I believe, has done it.
So Homeland Security, Tennessee, by the way, Homeland Security, not the federal, but Tennessee Homeland Security will work with the AG's office to promulgate the process on how they're going to identify this and identify. There are those sites out there that are going to come to the top of the list very quickly of who they're going to be looking for. And then they will see and look at the other stuff like PlayStation and the other one that the caller said. But this is just kind of trying to set the groundwork of how this is going to work. So, like I said, it would not surprise me that if this bill passes, that we come back next year with a tweak to it from Homeland Security or the AG's office.
Question for Scott Sapicki from 3314. What about cross-county enrollment for... I'm just reading vouchers. Mm-hmm. I think you'll take exception with that word. But as a Williams County resident, I'm concerned about an influx of out-of-county students, which would potentially be an unbearable burden for our county.
And I think what he's talking about is in the Senate's version, there's a proposal for public-to-public transfers also. And it gives some members in the General Assembly and the House side some indigestion about that because of the potential their cost for your local districts that get a student from outside the district. What we're trying to do is, and I don't want to get into the details on this because we're negotiating, but we understand the concern of that caller. We are trying to come up with a compromise that will mitigate his concerns so that we can still have the out of district transfers, but they have to go through some type of approval process by that receiving district to make sure there's not a cost burden to that district.
0857 writes in and says, I think letting teachers be able to carry firearms in schools turns what were once soft targets into more fortified entry and will make school shooters think twice before attacking. Your thoughts?
Well, I think one of the things that we have to do as soon as this bill passes is to change on the outside that we have people inside the building that are there to protect our students. So you send a clear message to those individuals, and we know with the Covenant, we've heard from the Covenant shooter that, she was casing the school, trying to figure out, when to attack, the soft target. And I think once we send a message out there that you'll be met with people there to stop you from gaining interest to the school, I think people will start to change their minds on these soft targets. I agree.
5969 writes in to Representative Scott Sapicki on the Murphy Show and says, I promise if a teacher gets the requirement for having a gun and training, they'll be working for a security company before you know it. $20+ an hour is better than any teacher salary.
Well, as we all know, teachers, there's every teacher.
I disagree with that, by the way.
Every teacher in the state's going to nod their head right now. They don't do it for the money. They do it because they're called to do this, to be a teacher. If we can provide them the opportunity to provide another layer of protection for their students, I think teachers will jump at this opportunity because, one, they get to go through the training to become an expert or as close to an expert as they can. And then number two, they're able to protect their children that they love. So I don't think they're going anywhere. I think they're going to, you know what? You might get more retired law enforcement. Maybe want to become teachers.
Maybe so. I know you don't want this in your life anymore, but I can't help what the people are asking about, Sapicki.
Go ahead.
What are the punishment aspects to some of this if Scott knows? And by the way, Scott has not purported to be an expert on this bill, but he's a member of the House of Representatives. So, and we have you here. Do you know what the punishment aspects of this on the
porn bill,
the age verification bill? Yeah.
Yes, it says the legislation would create a Class C felony and fines up to $10,000 against website owners and operators convicted of violating the law.
Renee writes in and says, my daughter's elementary school in Clarksville has an SRO from the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department every day. He's nice. All the kids like him. We feel safer knowing he's there when she starts kindergarten this year. How is this bill going to work in the school systems? So the first question, she's actually asked two unrelated. So on that front, if these teachers would be in addition to the already existing SRO. So it's an additional resource in these school systems that have SROs.
And that's correct. And then in the bill, it talks about how they have to coordinate with the SRO and the sheriff to make sure that they know who is friend, who is foe.
And then she asked a question that I don't know if she's being funny or not. She said, how does this, I think it's the age verification bill. That's what we're going to call it, age verification bill. How does that work within the school systems? I mean, I would think that you wouldn't want any of that being filtered through the school systems begin with, regardless of whose age might be, or what the age might be of the person using it.
I mean, if you're a parent out there and your school system allows these porn sites, I think as a parent, just give me a call. I'll make a phone call for you.
Yeah, raise your hand because we need to know about that.
Aren't those systems set up where there's limitations on the access?
I mean, they flag.
There is, but I think what she's getting at is there's a state website that schools access, and I'm forgetting the name right now. Somebody will probably text in what the name is, but it allows schools to partner with the Secretary of State's office to gain access to the state library. And there's stuff on the state library. It's a state library, so there's all kinds of stuff on there.
Jason writes in and says, what I've heard is that the punishment side of the bill was Scott's going to personally come to your house and give you a whooping.
If need be, I would. Or at least a stern talking to.
I just threw that one out there just to get the look on your face. It was perfectly worth it. Eddie's in Columbia with a question for Representative Scott Sapicki in the few moments we have left. Hey, Eddie.
Hey, how you doing, Matt?
Doing well, Eddie.
Good. Representative Sapicki, you talked a while ago about saying you wanted to put labels on these vegetables that you're talking about adding the vax to.
Mm-hmm.
How about we just ban that? Because you're talking about putting the vax in that has caused so many problems, and somebody doesn't notice that it's got that label on it. They've already had the vax or a couple of boosters.
Mm-hmm.
What's that going to do to their bodies?
That's a great question. And one of the things we tried to do last year was ban that, and we ran afoul of the Federal Commerce Clause. So what we did is we changed the bill to say, okay, if it's going to be in there, you have to treat it as a pharmaceutical, which means it can't be sitting next to normal lettuce because you have to get a prescription for it now. So now it's going to be doled out through a pharmacy, which there you take the profitability away from it.
So it would not be in regular grocery stores?
No, sir, it would not. Well, if the pharmacy wants to carry it, they can, but you got to get a prescription for it.
Okay, yeah, because I'm thinking.
So if there's an infusion of vaccine in food products, it becomes a pharmaceutical.
Yes, sir. And therefore, the Tennessee Food and Drug Administration comes in on testing and verification, et cetera, like that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your answer.
Thank you for the call.
Thank you very much, Eddie. Let's get to one or two more. James is in Nashville. Hey, James.
Hi, man. You there?
Yeah, I'm here. What's on your mind? You have a question for Scott?
Do we take off the breasts at the Schermerhorn because that's inappropriate as well? Where does this regulation end?
I mean, I'm right down from Music Row. I drive by. I drive by Musica every day.
I see debauchery and all of that, but we want to regulate people's rights on the internet. And I mean, come on, man. I see small children subjected to all kinds of pornography on a daily basis. And yet we take field trips down to the Schermerhorn.
Well, I'm gonna let Scott speak to this in a second, but here's what I would say, James.
I'm just saying, man.
I'm predisposed to agree with your side of the argument, but I don't think you're making the best of arguments, because I would suggest to you that I think we all know what we're talking about when we talk about internet pornography and the difference between internet pornography and Musica or the Schermerhorn that I can never pronounce or whatnot.
Schermerhorn, by the way. It's Schermerhorn, by the way.
Schermerhorn?
It's Schermerhorn.
Okay. Well, there you go, Sapicki.
So basically what we do is we look at, and this is, I'm reading directly from the bill, content that the average person applying contemporary community standards and taking the material with respect to minors of any age would find sexually explicit and harmful or inappropriate for minors or designed to appeal to the prurient interest or content that exploits, is devoted to, or principally consists of an actual, simulated, or animated display or depiction of specific parts of a body or acts as described in the bill. So basically it's the Miller test.
I don't know that I'm in favor of any of it. I need to absorb it, think about it fully. But right now, I'm more predisposed to jump to the chase and require age verification for the internet.
Mm-hmm.
That would automatically, on the system that you're working on, flag any inappropriate material from getting to the user, right? So if we just do it as a blanket, so I know that I'm dealing with someone under the age of 18, well, I'm going to block anything that they could receive that would be inappropriate or impermissible, and just blanket it in that way. And I would almost be more willing to accept that.
I would think what you'll see in about 6 months through government operations, these rules on how to implement this law when it passes will be come forward, and then we'll have a better idea of how we're going to attack this fly you keep talking about.
And a final thought on I want to circle back before we go on the scholarship piece, because there's the questions about transferring from school. I mean, you can transfer right now from county to county. That is permissible.
It is, yes. But the districts are allowed to hold a certain amount of spaces for growth, and then they can approve those individuals that come into their district.
So you're trying to better incorporate that into this piece of legislation?
Yeah, I think we already can use the existing program, and then some districts will charge an out-of-district fee that those U.S. citizens
can use the scholarship
to help pay for that.
And you mentioned U.S. citizens.
Apply or veto.
Yeah, so, I mean, we can't as a state, because of a Supreme Court decision in the 1980s, for those that don't know, we can't just say no illegal aliens
in public education.
In public education.
But if we create a benefit, we can.
So this is a scholarship.
It's a scholarship, therefore it's a benefit outside the normal funding mechanism of public schools.
So this would only apply to U.S. citizens?
In the House version, that's correct.
Okay, that's good news.
And I got one thing before we go.
All right, yeah, let's hear.
I just want to say that we passed a resolution today on the House floor to recognize the relationship between Tennessee and Israel in support of Israel. We passed that. We worked very hard. Chairman Todd carried the resolution. I was second on it, and Senator Hensley carried it. That the longstanding relationship that we have had with the people of Israel and the state of Israel, we wanted to reaffirm our support of them in regards to what happened with the atrocities. So.
And I was proud to be a citizen of the state of Tennessee to watch it, because I'm proud of you guys for doing it, and we will not necessarily address some of the negativity that came out of that. I'm sad to say that there were some that got their feelings hurt and panties in a wad or whatever
from a representative that we sit in her district,
a particular representative in question, but one way or the other, it was passed, and thank you guys for doing it.
My pleasure.
There's Representative Scott Spickey, a great better portion of an hour. It's 1:52 Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
2 o'clock, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. 50 degrees and overcast this afternoon on Music Row. Could see some patchy frost tonight. We have lows in the 30s today and tomorrow. Got a weather forecast coming up about 2 minutes away. President Biden calls today with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Was there first since 7 aid workers were killed by Israeli airstrikes in Gaza. The White House says President Biden emphasized to Prime Minister Netanyahu that strikes on humanitarian workers and the overall humanitarian situation in Gaza are unacceptable. Karen Travers has details from a readout released by the White House.
The White House for the first time is signaling President Biden could consider changes to U.S. policy toward Israel. According to a readout of the phone call with Prime Minister Netanyahu, the president emphasized Israel must take steps to address civilian harm and humanitarian suffering, and made clear U.S. policy will be determined by an assessment of what Israel immediately does to address those issues. So far, the president's increasingly strong criticisms of Israel have not come with any limits or conditions on the weapons the U.S. is sending to Israel.
And with tax day a little over a week away, the IRS warning taxpayers to be on the lookout for scam artists. IRS Commissioner Danny Werfel says the agency also always makes first contact by sending a letter to your home. So Werfel says if you get an email or text message claiming to be from the IRS, delete it and do not click any links. That's the latest news. Weather forecast next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
It is 2:05. Man, I could go for another 5 hours. I really could. I've got so many subject ideas on my tongue and on the table, and we've only another hour to go. Thank you for being with us on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It will be rapid fire, I promise you. as we get to as many subjects as humanly possible. We've also got Mac Maury back in the newsroom gathering headlines as we speak. Bell K is supporting the cause by making sure that everything that comes out of our speakers sounds as good as humanly possible. And he also supports the cause by... See, what I really should do right now is just flip that around and show everybody your ugly face. He came in and he adjusted my camera. I want to see what you did. I'm going to look over here and see. Well, now you're cutting off the top of my head.
Then move it back up just a touch because you were like,
was I hunched? I hunched?
Yes, a little more.
I try not to hunch.
A little more.
Hey,
there
all of
you go. Perfect.
Hey, guys, on Super Talk TV, how are you? Come on over to Super Talk TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. You can see my lovely, fetching, plaidish, checkered, multicolored dress shirt.
That's a nice shirt. I'd wear that shirt.
Well, thank you, Belle. I appreciate that.
I like the vest.
That says to me that that means much more coming from you than it does from Belle.
Burn the shirt.
And as far as the shirt goes, Belle, if you want to buy it for cheap, let's talk right after the show. Is Joe going to make it? I have gone back and forth on this. I admit it is most certainly, Mr. Resident, a serious question that I ask myself on almost a daily basis. I watched this speech. I'm not going to bore you with it. I watched this speech yesterday, and he cannot mumble through a speech delivered with a teleprompter. And I'm not too old. I am old enough to remember when George W. Bush beat Al Gore, beloved Tennessean. I say that to troll you.
So beloved he lost his home state.
I say that just to troll you people out there that have been around since Al Gore was a thing. Al Gore would talk about, hello, Tennessee, it's Al Gore back in action talking about, remember the lockbox? What we're gonna do is open up the lockbox and put Social Security right there in it, and George W. Bush can't get to it. That's my Al Gore impersonation, and I'm sticking with it. Once I start talking like this, I can't stop, and I don't know how to break the cycle. Thank you. When George W. Bush beat Al Gore, the mainstream media did not see it coming. They thought that the wash from the love that Democrats had for Bill Clinton, even in spite of some of his scandals late in his presidency, would carry over to Gore. It did not. As a matter of fact, as I remember it, Al Gore was loath to use the Clinton era to his advantage as a result of the many, many scandals involving females and interns and cigars and all of that sort of thing. George W. Bush becomes president. George W. Bush was, I'll say this, I don't know that he was that good of a president. As a matter of fact, I would suggest that on balance he wasn't. With history as our guide, some of the things that he did in the aftermath of 9/11, I understand that 9/11 kind of stymied his presidency and took it on a different path than he had intended. And some of the immediate aftermath of 9/11, I support, I applaud, and I love him. Some of the other things that he did more long-term, such as the Patriot Act, which I admit to you, I supported in the short term after 9/11. Because of the dramatic impact that had on every single one of our lives. But the long-term impact of the Patriot Act is far worse, in my opinion, in terms of its consequences concerning liberty and freedom in the United States of America, something that we have to cherish and hold on to lest they take it from us. And when I say when they take it from us, I'm not talking about foreign actors. I'm talking about our own government. But I digress. George W. Bush was not that good on a teleprompter, and the media just destroyed him. He would mispronounce words, and they would destroy him. I remember when George W. Bush came up with the word strategery. And the media had a field day with him. And here's, you guys got to understand, we got to be strategic and got to employ strategery. And everybody's like, what is he talking about? Strategery.
It's not a word.
That's not a preferred word. Anyway, so and the media just raked him. And they did the same thing with Trump to a lesser degree. I mean, Trump's more of a free flow of thought kind of guy. Donald Trump never knew a teleprompter that he liked. He couldn't stay on teleprompter on a bet. I mean, couldn't. So you kind of forgive him for some of the riffs that Trump makes, but they regularly try to strangle Donald Trump before his presidency, during his presidency, and now post-presidency during the campaign. They're trying to hog tie him with certain words that he uses and take him completely out of context when he uses them. Bloodbath being, what was the one from the other day? He, I had it yesterday on my big list of things to get into. The media attacks Donald Trump as soon as they see an opportunity to attack Donald Trump. And I forget what he was doing. This was Bloodbath Part 2. It was another, someone on the Members Nutrition Super Text line will tell me.
Oh, illegal aliens being animals.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there. He called all migrants animals. Very good. Yes. No, he didn't. Just listen to the context of the conversation. He was talking about the individual that killed Laken Riley, and people all across this country like that individual that are willing to kill people like Laken Riley, American citizens. But Joe Biden gets just an absolute pass. And we could go on and on and on and on. Our technology gives us the ability to have these soundboards in the control area, and every producer has them. Chris Webber has his sound. Johnny B has his sound. Mac Morey has his sound. Bell K has his sound. They all have these soundboards, and every single one of their soundboards chock full of Biden gaffes. I could spend the next hour playing them for you. Just the one. Well, that's right. Just the ones that we have collected, Mr. President. Pardon me, Mr. Resident. Yes, sir. I will not. But I don't know that he's going to make it. And I know that I have, as they say, waffled on this. I've always hated that phraseology, despite the fact that I just used it, because you don't actually waffle as a term. A political term means flip-flop, but you don't flip-flop a waffle. You don't flip a waffle. You flip a pancake. So it would be more appropriate to call it pancaking, but I digress. I've gone back and forth on this issue of whether or not they keep him. I said a couple of years ago that I did not see a way that Joe Biden was going to be the nominee. About a month ago, I questioned on air whether or not they could flip to someone else at this stage. Now I'm wondering, how do they not? We see the polls. We see the data. America is wise that this dude is not running the country. America is wise that this guy is not in charge. No sane Democrat believes he's in charge, honestly. Here's what they'll say. Bell K, let's play an impromptu version of the Matt Murphy Players, where I will play the role of the Democrat, and you challenge me on whether or not Joe Biden, tell me that Joe Biden's not in charge. Just challenge me on the idea that he's not making the decisions day to day. And this is how they respond.
Why didn't Joe Biden know that he had actually put out a proclamation regarding trans visibility day?
Of course he knew. He was saying something different about that. You know how big this country is. It takes far more than one person to run all of these huge operations. He's got such a great team around him.
Why is Joe Biden asking people that are handicapped to stand up at events?
He made a mistake. Everyone makes them. He was trying to honor that individual, and he apologized immediately once he realized Joe Biden cares so much about the elderly, the infirm, and the disabled. He's all three.
Why? Bastard. Why is he asking dead Congress people to acknowledge him at events?
Because he sees dead people. He's so close. He's got 1 foot in there.
God, that just became so funny.
If anyone is close enough, he's close enough. He's on the cusp. He's back and forth. He sees both sides. No, the Democrats would tell you, oh, come on, Murphy. He's got a team of incredible people around him. Well, he might appear like he's lost a step, but he's still getting after it. He's doing the good things for the good people. They know the truth, guys. They know the truth. Can you imagine being a reasonable Democrat and having to suck your thumb knowing what you have to do this November? Ugh. Ugh. I don't know. I'm sticking with my original replacement theory on this. I think they make a replacement at the convention. I don't believe that the polls are going to get any better. I don't believe that Joe Biden can lead the team in such a way that fills anyone with a sense of comfort or enthusiasm about the man himself.
I'm starting to believe that they have kept him for one reason only, and that's because there is a strong possibility at his age that he could die in office, and then they get Kamala, who is so much more liberal.
Well, she is, and then she could function as a one-termer.
Yeah, and she's controllable.
Yeah, no question. Kamala Harris is not, how to put this delicately, smart.
But she's an idiot.
She's not smart
at all.
Joe Biden, say what you will. There was a time, Joe Biden's always been deceptive and deceitful. He's always been a snake in the grass. If I were being mean-spirited, I would tell you that he's always been something of a scumbag. He's always been a liar, a plagiarist and a liar. They are the same thing. Well, thank you, Mr. President. I take that as a badge of honor coming from you, Peter Doocy, and myself. He's always been those things, but make no mistake, there was a time when he was slick. As slick as owl snot, as my grandpa used to say. But the question then is, who is the replacement? Because it cannot, and that's your problem. If it's Kamala, you get your brains handed to you on a silver platter. You talk about somebody that's more unlikable than, Joe Biden, for his Democrat base, is somewhat, I don't know if he's likable anymore or not, but they recognized him as slick and as what, and he's also, he is, I almost said salvageable. That's not the right word. He's expendable. In as much as he can move the ball towards socialism with impunity, because he doesn't care about any future. He doesn't care about any beyond, except the great beyond. So then who becomes his replacement? Well, the phrase hoisted by his own petard comes to mind because it was Joe Biden himself that insisted that he eliminate the greater portions of the population with regard to who's going to be his vice president, and he announced he would only select a black female, which led him with 4 choices, realistically, and Kamala Harris was one of them. And so he selects her, who knew that she would be as dumb, politically and otherwise, as she has turned out to be. And so she has become not an asset for the Biden administration, but a political liability. And I'm not talking about it in Republican circles right now. I'm talking about in Democrat circles. They never knew. Otherwise, they would not have picked her. Because now she's not bringing African Americans to the table. No, as a matter of fact, the polling that I've seen indicates that African Americans are gravitating to Donald Trump. Why? Because their economic situation is not any better than mine, not any better than yours. Their concerns about the flood of illegal alien activity, the invasion that's happening, are great, just like mine, just like yours. They're people, too. They go to the grocery store, too. They're trying to buy and sell, too. They're business owners, too. Kamala Harris has done nothing for them. Let me tell you something. As a voting bloc, the African-American community is getting real wise to the way that the Democrats have tried to pull the wool over their eyes for the last 50 years. And I've long said it, and I'll restate it, and there's nothing wrong with this position. Y'all need to get off the political Democrat plantation, okay? Because that's where they have y'all. You're just, I'm serious. The analogy works perfectly well that the Democrats have kept you in chains on the political plantation for way too long. And it's time to bust out and to see what the rest of the world looks like. And a lot of African American voters are doing just that, which is why the Democrats under the Biden administration, and obviously when I say Joe Biden, I don't mean Joe Biden. Joe Biden doesn't know his butt from a hole in the ground. He doesn't know poopy from mud. They have to run to all of these other identity political blocks, like transgenders in the LGBTQ community and the Muslim community, and they have thrown the Jewish population absolutely under the bus because they take the Jewish population for granted in much the same way that they take the black population for granted. But this is what you get when you engage in identity politics. There has to be an oppressed and there has to be an oppressor. And so far, it's worked quite well for them that they have tried to convince the rest of America that basically straight white males are the oppressor. And depending on who they're talking to, white females can be an oppressor too. Or depending on who they're talking to, Muslims can be an oppressor. Or depending on who they're talking to, Jews can be the oppressor. Or depending on who they're talking to. On and on it goes. That's why identity politics ultimately becomes a circular firing squad. Because eventually there aren't enough quote-unquote oppressors to meet the demands of the oppressed. And you have to continue to create them. And you start eating your own, which is what the Democrats are doing right now. Which is why I think they're smart enough to recognize they need a motivational candidate. And it ain't Kamala Harris. I don't know who it will be. Long way to answer the question. In the meantime, I have a couple of listener payoffs for you, some follow-ups, because I don't pay my debts. I'm sad to say. I do not pay off my intellectual debts on this radio show. And I have begged Bell K to become the official Matt Murphy debt collector. The topic,
you ignore me as much as you do your promises.
Is this, we should brand this in so fact. So someone tell me how we should brand this. I mean, because I present these things, I tease these topics, and I don't pay them back. And I'm sorry. It is a failure of your host.
The Matt Murphy hors d'oeuvre. You get a taste, but no meal.
Well, one way or the other, you're going to be the debt collector when it comes to paying off these debts. And I've got a couple to pay off, one involving the census and another involving Andy Ogles and some advertisements that are running on our radio station. We're going to do that. We got a win coming up for J.K. Rowling. I don't know if you've heard about that. Harvard is resegregating their campus. And Sage Steele, which relates to Joe Biden and his age and infirmity. That's all on the way before we get out of here. It's 2:23 on Super Talk. All right, friends, so many of you have reached out to me and asked me the question, and I don't know why you would ask, but I'll answer it. I'm happy to do so. Do you really use the Dr. Gill Center? Are you really a patient of theirs? Absolutely, I am. I love those guys. Dr. V, Dr. Dominic. I always say Dr. V. Tell him that I say Dr. V because I can't pronounce his last name. That's true. But he's great. Dr. V's great. Dr. Dominic's great. Dr. Wendy's great. The entire team at the Dr. Gill Center, just top-notch. Dr. Gill hand-selected each person within his office to create a team atmosphere to make sure that he can maximize their effort to get you comfort and a pain-free lifestyle as quickly as humanly possible. So at the Dr. Gill Center, they've been helping people get a pain-free life without the need for needles or pills for the last 30-plus years. Back pain, neck pain, knee pain, hip pain, elbow pain can all be treated safely, securely at their center in Franklin, and it works. I am a testimony to it, friends, as they've helped me with a number of different ailments on my back, and I am as right as rain, or at least as right as I can be. So I invite you to get to the Dr. Gill Center for less than $50, $49, complete examination. They'll go over you. They will give you some initial adjustments. They will get some x-rays going on, and they will get you a diagnosis for success from the Dr. Gill Center. Call them at 615-882-4838, 882-4838. Tell them Matt Murphy sent you to the one and only, the Dr. Gill Center for back, neck, and chronic pain relief in Franklin.
President Biden today on the phone with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. A fatality here in Tennessee after a tree fell on someone, and scamming in the video game world. We'll tell you all about it 30 minutes after the hour of 2 o'clock. Super Talk, the 97 WTN.
Thank you much, Mr. Morey. Got a couple of minutes to grab some telephone calls here on the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I'm hopeful to speak with Scott Borchetta of Big Machine Music. The Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, the tickets are going on sale today, so we anticipate a conversation with him in the upcoming few moments. Ed, right now in Brentwood, with a thought on this issue involving age verification for pornographic websites in the state of Tennessee. Ed, what's on your mind?
First off, welcome to Nashville.
Thank you.
I'm a big fan of the late, great Phil Valentine, and I think you are emerging as his heir apparent.
Oh, well, that means a lot to me. Thank you, Ed.
Well, you're very, very welcome. I'm 65 years old. My great uncle was a U.S. congressman from the 4th District from 1946 to 1976. The Democrat. As Al Gore got his first seat running when my uncle retired. But I'm like Reagan. I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me. I agree with everything that you've said for like the past hour. I'm just listening and going, amen, amen, amen. And I agree with your two founding principles that I fear against another government regulation, a knee-jerk reaction. That's incidentally why we have the problem with school shootings is they designated the schools as gun-free zones. Conveniently forgetting the fact that criminals, by definition, don't obey the law.
That's exactly right.
And second, that the responsibility ought to reside with the parents. So when I first heard this, I was, yes, this is a stupid idea. But upon further reflection, I thought about two things. You got to ask two questions: is it reasonable, and is it practical? And as far as reasonability, you can't examine anything in and of itself. You have to examine it relative to things. So when you look at things like driving a car, buying liquor, buying a gun, the government, protects teenagers in that way. And every argument that I've heard against it, is, well, they're gonna be able to get it somewhere. Well, yeah, even a 16-year-old can always find a street person to go in and buy him some Jack Daniels, but it cuts off 99% of it. So I think it fits the reasonable in this description. And is it practical? I do agree that the parent should have the ultimate responsibility. The question is how. And I've got way more experience than I care to admit in this area. But what this does, it puts the onus on the website. The websites are already protecting against this. If you go to an adult website, it now says, are you over 18? And in states like Texas or whatever, they make you show a driver's license. In Tennessee, you just go, yeah.
Yeah, you click a button.
14-year-old, sure.
Ed, you've inspired me because I think there might be a less intrusive workaround on this. I've got to run right now. Please call me back. We're right in the middle of the conversation, and I hate that. But I've got to go. You'll see why in a moment, because Mac Morey's going to hit me over the head with a microphone if I don't let him talk right now. But Ed, please call me back. Because it's such a great start to the conversation, and you've inspired me on something. I'll tell you what that is in just a moment. That's a professional tease bell, and you're the debt collector, so you better make me pay it off next, right after Mac Morey's newscast on Super Talk.
.232, I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. 50 degrees and setting to get to the high 30s later tonight. Could have some patchy frost when you wake up tomorrow morning. Forecast on the way in just a couple minutes. President Biden's call today with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will be their first since 7 aid workers were killed by Israeli airstrikes in Gaza. Karen Travers has details from a readout released by the White House.
The White House says President Biden emphasized to Prime Minister Netanyahu that strikes on humanitarian workers and the overall humanitarian situation in Gaza are unacceptable. According to a readout, the president made clear the need for Israel to announce and implement a series of, quote, specific, concrete, and measurable steps to address civilian harm, humanitarian suffering, and the safety of aid workers. The White House says the president made clear U.S. policy with respect to Gaza will be determined by its assessment of Israel's immediate action on those steps.
Right now in Tennessee, a person died yesterday after a tree fell on them. It happened on Garrison Springs Road around 5 o'clock. Williamson County Fire said workers were clearing land when a tree fell on that victim. First responders tried CPR on the scene. That victim later died at Williamson County Medical Center. And a new warning for Americans who enjoy spending virtual money in their favorite video games. It's a $57 billion industry, but a federal watchdog agency says video games could become a haven for fraud, scams, and abuse, a big ongoing issue. Kids using their parents' credit cards to spend thousands of dollars on in-app purchases. Elizabeth Scholze gives us more info.
Rohit Chopra is the head of the CFPB, the government agency charged with safeguarding Americans' finances.
What's pretty obvious is that their financial incentives are for players to spend as much as possible.
It's a lesson Michael and Jennifer Ferry's 8-year-old son Joey learned when he unintentionally racked up $4,000 in charges on his parents' credit card.
I think sometimes it's confusing as to what's real money and what's, fake money.
After months of trying, the Ferrys finally got a full refund.
The Entertainment Software Association, which represents the video game industry, says developers are committed to providing parents with transparency. And that's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Guys don't like to talk about our health. Most of us, at least, don't. They just rub some dirt on it and move on. Well, the fact of the matter is there are some numbers you certainly need to know, especially when you reach a certain age. Gentlemen, if you've noticed a lack of energy, motivation, or drive, if you're noticing that you can't accomplish certain things that you once could, if you notice that you don't want to get to the gym or you don't want to do work out of doors, or maybe this issue has manifested itself in certain bedroom activities. You know what I'm talking about, guys. If this is the case, I'm not here to shame your game because I don't think there's any shame in recognizing that maybe you find the numbers out that are causing this impact on your life and then correct the issue at its source. That's where the Tennessee Men's Clinic comes in. Tennessee Men's Clinic, since 2014, they've been addressing men's health issues in this way for a good time now. Over a decade in Midtown. They've opened their shop in Cool Springs for over a year now, and it has been going like gangbusters because men recognize that they wait too long for these things, and you don't need to wait. Let's go ahead and get it handled, guys. The Tennessee Men's Clinic is here for you. Go to TennesseeMen'sClinic.com to find out some of the programs they have available to you, or better yet, make a call. Go see one of their qualified urologists today and see what they can do for you. It all starts with a telephone call at 615-208-9090. 208-9090.
You all right?
I just want to make sure that everyone on the television side of things sees my face of disgust at
Yeah, you look like you got some serious intestinal issues going on.
Ate a bug. I don't like you, Bill.
Mom?
I've never liked you.
Hey, I can call family if I want to be talked to like that.
Did Belle say mom when you said
And in my mind, I see that. I see it as clear as an unmuddied lake. There's Belle, little 9-year-old Belle, and his mother looking at him at the breakfast table.
I don't like you.
I don't like you, Belle. I've never liked you.
Mom?
Where's Dad?
He left because of you.
I didn't say that. You said
that was Belle. That was Belle.
That was Belle. That was not us. 615-737-9986. Man, I got a lot to get to. Let's give you the oversight on this Harvard deal. Harvard University, they're resegregating. After all of the effort, I mean, there are people still alive that were prevented their right to vote.
Yeah, but this is okay because it's the quote-unquote minorities that are segregating now.
These offices of equity, diversity, inclusion, and so Mac Morey's back in the newsroom. Mac, in your production of the Chris Hand Show today, what was the A that y'all came up with?
Yeah, the DEIA, accessibility.
Yeah, right. So it's not DEI anymore. It's DEIA. And you guys were speculating as to whether or not there would be additional add-ons, right? I have one.
Well, actually, I just got a press release, and it says it's now DEIA plus.
Well, I know one of the pluses. Because at Harvard, it's equity, diversity, inclusion, accessibility, and belonging. Not making this up. So now I put the accessibility in there. They don't. But eventually they'll add that one too. So at Harvard, their office is the Office for Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging.
They belong in the nut house.
It's like their version, the modern psychological version of Lost and Found.
Yes.
Where you can find your belonging.
Or lost in space.
Or lose your belonging. So they're holding what they call affinity celebrations at their 2024 commencement ceremonies. Harvard plans to hold a disability celebration, a global indigenous celebration. These are all graduation ceremonies where only the affected individuals are allowed to attend. No one else allowed to attend. Let's do the list. Disability celebration, a global indigenous celebration, Asian American Pacific Islander Desi American celebration. I have no idea what a Desi American is. I was today old when I learned that term. Desi American. I don't know what that means. I could be cursing on them. I don't know. A first generation. I should pre-read these. Listen to this. Don't make me laugh. Listen to this. Disability celebration. These are all graduation ceremonies. Global Indigenous celebration. Asian American Pacific Islander Desi American celebration. I can't get through it. A first generation low income celebration. What the hell does that mean? A first generation low income celebration. Does that mean that I am the first generation of low income earners in my family? Everyone else was rich, but I'm not? I don't know what that means. A first generation low income celebration. A Jewish celebration. I got that one. A Latinx celebration. A lavender celebration. What is a lavender celebration? Say celebration of lavender? No, I think it's LGBT students. That's lavender.
Q plus.
A black celebration. Yeah, no two-spirit there, as far as I can see. I guess that's global indigenous. If you're a two-spirit, you go to the global indigenous. But anyway. Black celebration, a veteran celebration, and an Arab celebration. So let's go over these again. We got disability, global indigenous, Asian American, Pacific Islander, Desi American, First generation low income celebration. I still can't laugh while I read that, or not laugh. A Jewish celebration, a Latinx celebration, a lavender celebration, a black celebration, a veteran celebration, and an Arab celebration. The university will also hold a central commencement ceremony for students of all backgrounds. You know what they're not going to hold? A whites-only celebration. Because, that would be wrong. 6766 says racist, gonna racist. I suppose so. The only publicly available mention of any of the affinity celebrations on any Harvard website is published on the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences page. The note does not mention the specific events or groups recognized, simply describing them as, quote, student-led, staff-supported events that recognize and celebrate the accomplishments of graduates from marginalized or underrepresented communities. In other words, they're trying to hide them. Their Office for Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging, no accessibility apparently, are holding these, and it's only because of a document obtained by National Review that we know anything about them. Harvard's affinity group celebrations came under fire last year after Christopher Rufo posted a schedule on his X account, noting that the university had deleted the page from its website. Rufo is an absolute national treasure when it comes to DEI and the nonsense that it's causing in the United States of America. Let me give you my take on it. I don't know that I've ever told you this. DEI is brilliant in many ways, because who in the modern era would say that they are against diversity? Do you want a diverse workforce? Well, of course I do. Do you want diversity in management? Well, of course we do, as long as these folks are qualified. Do you want to include everyone? Well, of course I do. Then you're for inclusion. Yes, I am. What about equity? That's the one that gets tricky. And if you're not careful, you will conflate equity with equality, which is exactly what they want you to do. They want you to think you're saying equality. Who doesn't want equality? After all, people of color in the United States of America fought hard for equality, in a fertile playing ground that's level for all people. Of course we want that. That's not what DEI does at all. Hear me now and know this well. The people that are promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion tactics in the workplace have no interest in equality in the workplace. They are attempting to turn the tables on those that they perceive as the oppressors, and they want to subjugate the oppressors. They want revenge. They want comeuppance. It is the entire premise behind this Bravo Sierra nonsense. And if you know what Bravo Sierra means, then you know what I'm talking about. We must stamp it out. We must demand that we promote, that we hire, and that we do things of a colorblind nature. Obviously, we need to promote those efforts to make sure that we are not subjugating any group of people based on any perceived ethnicity or race or class or whatever. But that's not what these folks are doing. Oh, on paper, it looks great. On paper, it looks like anyone and everyone with any sense about them would be in favor of this. The unstated goal is to subjugate a broad portion of the United States of America and to resegregate society as a result. Only this time, the POCs are on top. That's their perception, not mine. It's 2:49. Brian Wilson coming up next. I owe Brian a big apology. I did not get to him yesterday. We did not get to do our cross, and that's all on me. But I'm going to find out what his big, broad plan is for the big eclipse. That's up next on Super Talk. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Our time almost up, 2:57. I failed to check the clock yesterday, and I failed to have a good cross with Brian Wilson. I owe him an apology,
Well,
and I'm going to make it up to you.
That conversation you were having was a lot more interesting than anything I had to say.
Well, I'll tell you what. I apologize for that, but I'm going to make it up to you, Wilson. You know how?
How?
I'm going to stick around during the afternoon hours of Monday's broadcast, and you're actually doing me a favor as a result, because while you are watching the Path of Totality, I get to go on the roof or somewhere and actually watch the eclipse in anticipation of the drive with Brian Wilson, No Brian Wilson on Monday.
You mean the
That's pretty good. Can I get that one more time? Come on.
You know what that's from, don't you?
I do not.
Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
That's how we came to know Audrey 2. The plant,
which may or may not happen this time around. Who knows?
There was a. Well, and speaking of which, later in the show, I was thinking there's got to be some great songs about eclipses. And I have found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, I can think of one. I don't want to spoil the fun, but I can think of one.
Give me one.
Pink Floyd.
Yeah, I mean, there's about 20, actually, but I was thinking the more commonly known songs.
Total Eclipse of the Heart, Bonnie Tyler.
That's on my list.
Okay.
And the best one, honestly, when you think about it, I mean, all the list that I went through missed it. It's an obvious. Moon Shadow by Cat Stevens.
Oh, that's good.
I'm being followed by a moon shadow. What is an eclipse? It's a moon shadow.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to get a report. I'm going to beg the host of the drive Monday to call into his own show to give us a full report on the totality experience come Monday. Will you do that for us?
Well, I'd be happy to do it. I don't want to do it during the moment. If you'll allow me to call right after.
Oh, no. I wouldn't expect that.
Because I really want to experience the thing, but I'm happy to do that. And I'll tell you, I've been looking at the weather, and where I'm going, they're talking partly cloudy skies. Now, what I'm hoping for is that we have, better weather, clear skies, so you can see it. So we'll be watching that. Coming up, by the way, there's a Vandy poll out. A lot of really happy, sunshiny things being taken from it. Well, if you look into the internals of the poll, there's some things that people in Nashville are concerned about, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. So much coming up in the next hour.
I love it. Can I get it one more time? One more time?
Hang on. I got it.
Uh-oh. One more time. More of that and more Brian Wilson on the way right after McMurray's newscast, which is coming up right now on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We'll see you tomorrow, folks.